This is sort of a new kind of video for my channel. If you watched my Patreon launch video a couple months ago, I mentioned that one of the things I wanted to offer to top-tier patrons was to help them design a capsule wardrobe that they could use to plan out their sewing projects. I asked them to send in pictures and ideas and sketches and a template of how they wanted their mannequin to look, and we started from there. I think this will be a fun new branch of videos. I sort of quit doing capsule wardrobes for a while, really for two reasons. One, I had too large of a buildup of projects I designed that I wanted to actually make. And then two, I kind of just got bored with them. I think the reason for that is because they were all designed to my taste, which resulted in similar color palettes and really similar silhouettes, with T-length skirts, pants only as an afterthought, universally fitted bodices, and overall the capsules just got a bit too samey and a bit boring to draw. That's why I find this idea so interesting. From a creative standpoint, it's a lot more of a challenge to design clothes that I find pretty, but also to fit another person's vision and requirements and taste. So let's get into it. This capsule has sort of an interesting dual purpose. It was designed for Shaanan, who is also a writer and a world builder. She does want to make these items in real life, but she wanted to design a capsule that could function as the wardrobe of the main character in her story, a medieval fantasy princess named Zamora, who goes on an adventure. So that will require both more formal regal attire and also more comfortable practical travel clothing. With this in mind, I leaned a bit heavier into the costuming elements. Shaanan wants to make and wear these items herself, but I got the impression it's more for fun, not as something she wants to convert her entire wardrobe into wearing full time. And that's cool because it gives us a lot more flexibility to only be moderately practical. The other thing to note is that Shaanan is a beginning sewer, so I wanted the clothing to be on the simpler side to make, something you could easily adapt big box patterns for instead of having to come up with your own patterns from scratch. Here are the inspiration photos Shaanan sent me. A strong medieval fantasy vibe with a bit of 18th century inspiration, as fantasy medieval often has. I have discovered that medieval and 18th century design elements can successfully be mixed, but only really if you lose the 18th century silhouette. Tabs on stays do not mix well with slim fitted medieval skirts, and the only reason you would need the conical 18th century silhouette is if you want to wear bodices with a stomacher. If you want a rigid, flat stomacher, then you need stays. For anything else, princess seams do just fine, and they are much easier to find patterns for. This capsule will comprise of 12 pieces, not including underclothing and shoes. For the general type of pieces she wanted, Shaanan listed full-length dresses and skirts, one dress with long sleeves, a shirt, a coat, a cloak, and pants for work and travel. For colors and patterns, she sent me swatches to customize my chintz vine design to a deep magenta. She wanted most of the palette to be pulled from these swatches. And she wanted something in plaid and sent me this plaid as a reference. So, working all of that in together, I suggested a more modern silhouette. Shaanan was tempted to use the tabless stays, and while that would have worked underneath the silhouette, it's a bit unnecessary, and once you pattern a bodice as a conical silhouette, you're really committing to the stays. With a more modern silhouette, you leave yourself the option of just wearing a regular bra beneath them if you want. Hey, get off the fence. I'm sorry, there's a chicken on my fence. I'll be right back. Well, this wasn't going to be a chicken video, but yep, you see your friends outside? They were good chickens. They stayed off the fence. You jumped the fence yesterday, too. Yeah, you gotta learn to stay inside the fence, otherwise nobody's gonna get to free range. So Shaanan instead asked for the cupped bodice I made more recently, and I agree it is a better option. I was inspired a bit by the Langberg bra when designing it, so that works quite well for medieval. The only addition Shaanan wanted were a few channels of boning in the bodice for a bit more structure. I asked Shaanan if she wanted to add a petticoat to the cupped bodice, like the original Langberg bras had. However, the problem with that was an attached petticoat would interfere with wearing pants. Chirp, chirp, chirp. Shaanan said that when wearing skirts in real life, she always wears some kind of shorts beneath them. So instead, I drew a detached pair of panelets. One more note on the underclothing, Shaanan said that the magenta color and the floral print are meant to represent the royal pattern and the royal family. She asked if the underclothing could be magenta too. Here's why I love that. Are you mad? Are you mad? Well, good. You are a very distracting bird. If you dress low-key and incognito to go on an adventure, you aren't necessarily going to think to change your underwear. Which means that even if she dresses common, there's a point of vulnerability, that if anyone saw a bit of her underwear through a gap in her clothes, they might recognize that those are nice underclothes, hence you come from money. It's also It's also a bit symbolic, dressing for a part on the surface, but then your real self lies just beneath. Okay. You've been punished enough. I'll take you back out. Okay, we can go outside now. You can go outside. Just stay off the fence. Alright, with the underwear and silhouette set, it's time to get designing the main wardrobe. Looking again at our inspiration pics, here's what I came up with. I used this dress as inspiration for the court attire. However, I broke it into 3 pieces: a skirt, a bodice with puffed sleeves and the V neckline, and another bodice with a squared neckline and long fitted sleeves. Then from this dress, I liked the idea of a very simple yellow bodice and skirt set, mostly for layering with other pieces. Then another bodice and skirt set, loosely based off of this dress, but a bit simplified. I can see this one being still nice castle attire, but more casual. Then there will be a fairly standard adventure cloak, and for the shirt, I asked Shaanan if she meant more of a blousey chemise type shirt or something more like a men's shirt. The answer was exactly what I predicted: Bernadette's puffy pirate shirt. There will be the 3 skirts mentioned above, and they will all be ankle length and flared A-line patterns. For the travel pants, I suggested long, wide leg trousers. Those could be cool because they would still look very similar to the wide skirts, but they'd give the wearer just a little bit more freedom. And then one piece will be a plaid dress based off of this reference, which could be worn with the shirt beneath and over top the skirts or the trousers. And the final piece will be a fancy fitted coat based off of this reference, but open at the front, so whatever is being worn underneath could be seen. The only qualm I had about this idea is that it would be open at the chest and very breezy, so I suggested some kind of false front that came up higher. This might mean losing the cool lace-up look, but I think in real life it would be simple enough to make the false front removable, perhaps using hooks and eyes. And then you can do either. So Shaanan liked the designs I came up with, and I set to digitizing them. So here's the initial design sheet I sent Shaanan. The colors are basically placeholders while I made sure that the actual designs were right. I did almost immediately realize a change I wanted to make with the magentas. The lighter shade was harder to match with other pieces, so I made the long sleeve bodice a deeper shade instead. And I changed the coat to match that, giving it gold trim and using the floral print as a contrast lining. This makes both pieces work quite well with the cord attire in a variety of combinations. For the other pieces, Shaanan asked if we could try the plaid in green instead of gray, and she asked if we could change the grays and blacks to shades of brown instead. We also played around with the green bodice and skirt set, going back and forth on lighter and darker greens. I made 2 pairs of shoes, one decorated and one plain. On a final pass, we made the magentas even lighter and we were done. For the fabric choices, I'm going to recommend what I would describe the pieces as made from in the story. When making them in real life, Shaanan is a beginner sewer. Beginners make mistakes, and there's nothing that will freeze you faster than being too intimidated to cut into your expensive fabric, and there's nothing more demoralizing than feeling like you've wasted your fabric when the piece doesn't turn out how you pictured. However, since this capsule repeats a lot of the same shapes and base patterns, Shaanan could easily start out with the travel pieces using lower quality fabrics and then progress upwards as she goes. She could use natural fibers, synthetics, blends, whatever she can find locally or repurpose, anything she wants. But keep in mind that this capsule is also filling the purpose of a roadmap for Shaanan to visualize and describe her character, so I want to recommend what fabrics these pieces could be made from within the fantasy setting. In fantasy settings, linen and wool are the mainstay. Linen can be extremely fine and crisp and lightweight, or it can be woven dense and sturdy. Wool is incredibly varied. It depends on the type of sheep it comes from, the level of quality in processing the wool, and the manner in which it was woven. You can have luxurious, fine, soft wools, or you can have thick, coarse, felted wools, and all manner of wool in between. Cotton is another matter. Historically, it could only be grown in certain climates, and in Europe it usually needed to be imported. This gave it a historical allure that doesn't necessarily translate to a modern audience because cotton is so common nowadays, and most people are aware to some extent of the historical lust for silk, which originally only came from the Far East and was a royal secret for centuries until some silkworms were smuggled out. So for the princess's underclothing, I would recommend a lightweight linen. For her pants, if they're meant to be more multi-purpose, I'd recommend a more medium or heavyweight linen. If they're meant for maximum warmth, I'd recommend wool lined with linen. For her shirt, it could also be a linen. It might start out pure white in the story, and the white might fade and discolor throughout the adventure. For her yellow set, since this is the most versatile set, fine enough to wear formally but durable enough to take traveling, I would recommend a high-quality, ultra-soft wool. For the green set, I definitely see a heavier cotton, maybe like a cotton sateen, something practical but nice enough to wear around the castle. Maybe the bodice is a cotton velveteen. The plaid dress would definitely be a wool tartan or tweed. The skirt would probably be unlined, but you would want to line the bodice with something soft if you had any intention of wearing it without the shirt beneath. The cloak would also be wool. The historical term for thick felted wool is broadcloth, but broadcloth nowadays refers to thin, cheap cotton poly blends. So maybe it would read better if you just called it felted wool. It would probably be unlined and very simply made. Then for the floral print, in the story I think it would definitely be silk, probably painted or embroidered with the floral designs, as such fabrics were made historically. In real life, Shaanan is planning on printing the design to spoonflower fabric. For the long sleeve bodice, I think it could be a lovely shimmering silk velvet. That would add to the warmth and give it wonderful texture with the silks. But in real life, I don't recommend a beginner touch velvet. In fact, I don't recommend anyone touch velvet. And finally, for the coat, I would describe it as using the same velvet as the previous bodice and lined with a matching silk floral. This is definitely an element of fantasy. We love subtle hints of prints, but historically, if somebody was going to bother to paint or embroider fabric, it wasn't going to be wasted on a lining. But this is fantasy, so you can get away with more. Maybe it's a sign of extreme wealth to imagine someone using painted fabric as a lining. So, presenting the final capsule wardrobe. For court, the princess can wear her fancy shoes. She could choose to wear either her floral skirt or her yellow skirt. She can pair with them her magenta and yellow bodices, combined in a variety of ways. I feel like the floral bodice would be used on the most formal occasions, and the yellow bodice would be worn on the least formal occasions. The yellow could be worn beneath the floral to fill in the neckline. The long sleeve bodice would be nice for winter and could also be worn underneath the floral or yellow bodices for extra warmth. If it is particularly cold or she needs to be seen outdoors while presenting herself formally, she can wear her long coat over top. The hood can be worn up or down, and the front can be either laced up to display her dress beneath, or it can be filled with a button up front for maximum warmth. In the castle, while not at court, the princess will probably swap out her shoes for a plainer, more worn-in pair. She can wear her yellow skirt or her green one. These can be paired with her green bodice, her yellow bodice, or her plaid dress. Her shirt could be worn underneath the yellow bodice or the plaid dress for an extra layer of coverage, or it could be worn by itself, particularly if doing work in the sun. I think it would be interesting if the court attire focuses on magenta, but her personal clothing leans into greens. This might indicate that green is the princess's favorite color, despite magenta being the family color or the color symbolizing royalty. Then for her adventure, she would definitely choose to take her trousers and maybe her yellow skirt, since as a princess she knows the value of looking high class when the situation calls for it, like when you're trying to talk your way into somewhere. She would also take her shirt and her travel cloak, which was made simply with discretion in mind. She might also have packed her yellow bodice for an extra layer of warmth and a layer of finery if she wants to appear higher class. She might take her plaid dress. Being a heavy wool, it would be a nice warm layer to add, and having a split skirt, she could wear her trousers beneath it for an interesting look that would blend classic dresses with a ready-for-anything vibe. I do think the yellow set is very interesting. It is the one set that matches, color-wise, all of her other clothing. It transcends the different color groups and is universally useful. If green versus magenta represents a bit of a split in the princess's desires, magenta representing family duty and green representing personal duty, yellow seems to represent the bridge between both spheres. It's not my story, I'm just spitballing because costuming and symbolism. But it's interesting, especially if she hangs on to the yellow set throughout the course of the story, as if hanging on to everything she's left behind or walked away from or given up to pursue her adventure. Maybe in conclusion, the princess will find a way to incorporate green into her court attire, finding that balance between responsibilities, incorporating her true self into the image she's supposed to represent. Again, it's not my story. Sorry, I am currently at the point where I will happily overthink anybody else's story but mine. I need to get back on my stuff. So, thanks for watching. I hope that you enjoyed, and I hope Shaanan got a wealth of ideas and inspiration and motivation from all of this. She doesn't have to use all of my ideas, but I hope they've given her a starting place at the very least. If you're on my Patreon at the middle or upper tier, this capsule wardrobe has been posted in the original AI format, which you can use if you have Adobe Illustrator to adapt it into your own capsule planning. If you are interested in seeing more of my work, you can subscribe to me here on YouTube and follow my Instagram. I also have another YouTube channel just for world building and another Instagram for that. See ya. And a special thanks to D. Meester Mehta, Aaron Wishart, Charlotte R., Shia Thompson, Haley Martin, Jesse Bryant, Shaanan, Leisha Slaughter, Mackenzie Ann Duarte, Molly S., and Stella Sapient. Thank you so much for your support of this channel.